Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I am MK Chapintaj. Today in this video I am giving you the knowledge about the first module of the subject Management and Entrepreneurship for IT Industries, and this is for 4th SEM CSE CBCS VTU students. I am dedicating this video to all of the students all over the world. Now let us see first module of Management and Entrepreneurship for IT Industry. Management. Every business needs the direction. This direction is given by management. Management is a critical element in the economic growth of a country by bringing together the four factors of production, that is men, money, material and machines. A country with enough capital, manpower and other natural resources can still be poor if it does not have competent managers to combine and coordinate these resources. Peter Drucker rightly asserts that without management a country's resources of production remain resources and never become production. Management is the dynamic, life-giving element in every organization. Manager. A manager is one who contributes to the organization's goals indirectly by directing the efforts of others, not by performing the task himself. Employee. On the other hand, a person who is not a manager makes his contribution to the organization's goals directly by performing the task himself. Definition of management by Peter Parker Follett. Management is the art of getting things done through people. Two weaknesses of Mary Parker Follett's definition are: it uses the word art. Management is merely an art in half truth. Art deals with the application of knowledge. Management is not merely application of knowledge, it also involves acquisition of the knowledge. This definition does not throw light on the various functions of a manager. By George R. Terry, management as a process consisting of planning, organizing, actuating, and controlling performed to determine and accomplish the objectives by the use of the people and resources. The four management activities included in this process are planning, organizing, actuating, and controlling. Planning means that managers think of their actions in advance. Organizing means that managers coordinate the human and material resources of the organization. Actuating means that managers motivate and direct subordinates. Controlling means that managers attempt to ensure that there is no deviation from the norm or plan. By Henry Fayol, management is the conduct of affairs of business moving towards its objectives through a continuous process of improvement and optimization of resources. By Coates, management is a function of guidance and leadership, control of the efforts of a group or individuals in order to achieve goals or objectives of an organization. Management is the process of designing and maintaining an environment in which individuals working together in a group effectively. Nature and characteristics of management. The success of production depends on effective combination and coordination of the following factors: land, labor, capital, organization, and entrepreneurship. It should be stable, it should be capable, applicable to all kinds of organizations, it should be transparent, its approaches are to be clear and goal oriented, it should be simple yet effective, it should have well defined goals, it should have good planning, organizing, staffing, directing and controlling functions, it should provide conducive atmosphere of work. Scope of management. The management is must for every organization. The existence of management ensures proper function and running of an enterprise. Management plans the activities, coordinates and utilizes the available resources effectively and efficiently at minimum cost. Scope of management is not limited only to business organization, but it is extended to business establishments such as hospitals, educational institutions, government offices, service organizations, security organizations, etc. Management scope can be extended to the following areas of life: developing management, financial management, marketing management, production management, transport management, purchase management, sales management, office management. Functional areas of management are process of management. There is enough disagreement among management rights on the classification of managerial functions. Some classify these functions into 4 types, some into 5 and some into 6 or 7. Newman and Summer classify these functions into four: organizing, planning, leading, controlling. Henry Foyle classified these functions into five: planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, and controlling. Leather Glick classifies into seven: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. Kuntz and O'Donnell classifies into five types: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating. In general, let's consider four functions of a management: planning, organizing, directing, and coordinating. Ernest Dale adds two additional functions: innovation and representation. Planning is the function that determines in advance what should be done. It is looking ahead and preparing for the future. It is the process of deciding the business objectives and charting out the methods of attaining those objectives. It is the determination of what is to be done, how and where it is to be done, who has to do it, and how results are to be evaluated. This is done not only for the organization as a whole but for every division, department, or sub-unit of the organization. Thus, planning is a function which is performed by managers at all levels: top, middle, and supervisory. Plans are made by top management for the organizations as a whole, may over periods as long as 5 or 10 years. Plan made by middle or the first line managers cover much shorter periods. Such plans may be for the next day's work. Organizing. It is a part of management that involves in establishing a structure of role for people to fill in an organization. To organize a business, it's necessary to provide it with everything useful to its functioning: personal, raw materials, tools, capital. All this may be divided into two main sections: human organization and material organization. Once managers have established objectives and developed plans to achieve them, they must design and develop a human organization that will be able to carry out those plans successfully. According to Allen, this organization refer to the structure which results from identifying and grouping work, defining and delegating responsibility and authority, and establishing relationships. Staffing may be considered an important function involved in building the human organization. In staffing, the manager attempts to find the right person for each job. Staffing obviously cannot be done once and for all, since people are continually leaving, getting fired, and retiring and dying. Often too, the changes in the organization create new positions, and these must be filled. Directing. After plans have been made and the organization has been established and staffed, the next step is to move towards its defined objectives in directing. This function can be called by various names: leading, directing, motivating, actuating, and so on. Directing means leading the people towards the defined objective, explain the people what they have to do, and help them to do their best. It is the act of simulating or inspiring workers. If the workers of an enterprise are properly motivated, they will pull their weight effectively, give their loyalty to the enterprise, and carry out their task effectively. Two broad categories of motivation are financial and non-financial. Financial motivation takes the form of salary, bonus, profit sharing, etc., while non-financial motivation takes the form of job security, opportunity of advancement, recognition, praise, etc. Directing thus involves the sub-functions: communication, leadership, and motivation. Communication is the process of passing information and understanding from one person to another. Leadership is the process by which a manager guides and influences the work of his subordinates. Motivation means arousing desire in the minds of workers to give their best to the enterprise. Controlling is measuring and correcting of activities of subordinates to make sure that the work is going on as per the plan. Controlling function of management involves three elements: establishing standards of performance, measuring current performance and comparing it against the established standards, taking action to correct any performance that does not meet those standards. Innovating. It is not necessary for organization to grow bigger, but it is necessary that it constantly grow better. Innovation means creating new ideas which may either result in the developing new products or finding new users for old products. Representing. Manager is required to represent his organization before various outside groups which have same stakes in organization. The stakeholder can be government officials, labor unions, financial institutions, suppliers, customers, etc. A manager must win their support by effectively managing the social impact of his organization. Every function has two dimensions, substantive and procedural. Substantive dimension is what is being done, procedure is how it is done. See the figure here. Role or goal of a management. A role is a set of behaviors associated with a particular job. A manager plays variety of roles responding to particular situation. There are three important roles: interpersonal roles, informational roles, decisional roles. Interpersonal roles. Figure ahead, manager has to perform some duties of ceremonial nature such as greeting dignitaries, attending the weddings of an employee, taking important consumers to lunch, etc. Leader. As a leader, every manager has to be motivated and encourage his employees. Liaison. Manager has to develop contact with outside people and collects useful information for well-being of the organization. Informational roles. Monitor. A manager monitors his environment and collect information through his personal contacts with colleagues and subordinates. Disseminator. Manager passes some of the information directly to his key subordinates. Spokesman. He communicates the goal of the organization to his staff and the progress of work to his superiors and represents his organization before various outside groups. Third one is decisional rules. Enterprise manager looks for innovation to improve his organization. Disturbance handler. The manager has to work relatively. His firefighter must seek solutions for various unanticipated problems like strikes, suppliers problems, employees problems, etc. Resource allocator. Manager must divide work and delegate authority among his subordinates. He must decide who will get what. Negotiator negotiates with the employees and tries to solve any internal problems. Levels of management. In any organization, there are three levels of management: the first line management, low level management, middle level management, top level management. First line management is made up of foreman and white collared supervisors. Middle management consists of vast and diversified group consisting plan managers, personnel managers, and department heads. Top management consists of a board chairman, the company's president, and the executive vice presidents. See the figure here. Management and administration. Administration involves thinking it's a top level function. Management involves doing it's a lower level function. See the table here. Evolution of management. The evolution of management can be studied in three parts as under: early classical approaches represented by scientific management, administrative management, and bureaucracy. New classical approaches represented by human relations, movement, and behavioral approach. Modern approaches represented by quantitative approach, system approach, and contingency approach. First is scientific management. Frederick Winslow Taylor, 1956 to 1915, is considered to be the father of scientific management. His contributions under scientific management are time and motion study. Taylor started time and motion study, under which each motion of job was timed out with the help of a stopwatch. Shorter and fewer motions were developed. Thus, the best way of doing a job was found, which replaced the old rule of thumb knowledge of the workman. The differential payment, new payment plan called the differential piece work was introduced, which was linked incentives with production. Under this plan, a worker received low piece rate if he produced the standard number of pieces, and high rate if he surpassed the standard, which would motivate the workers to increase production. Third one is drastic reorganization and supervision. Introduced two new concepts: separation of planning and doing. Functional foremanship. Taylor suggested that the work should be planned by the foreman and not by the worker, and there should be as many foremen as there are special functions involved in doing a job, and each of these foremen should give order to the worker on his specialty. Fourth one is scientific recruitment and training. Taylor emphasized the need for scientific selection and development of the worker. He says that management should develop and train every worker to bring out his best faculties and enable him to do a higher, more interestingly and more profitable class of the work than he has done in past. Intimate, friendly cooperation between the management and the workers. Taylor argued that the management and the workers both should try to increase production rather than quarrel, which would increase the profits to such an extent that labor and management would no longer have to compete for them and should show common interest in increasing productivity. Contributions. Time and motion studies have made us aware that the tools and physical movements involved in a task can be made more efficient and rational. Scientific selection of workers has made us reorganize that without ability and training a person cannot be expected to do job properly. The scientific management have to work design encouraged the managers to do one best way of doing the job. Limitations. Taylor's belief that economic incentives are strongly enough to motivate workers for increased production proved wrong, as there are other needs such as security, social needs, or egoistic needs rather than financial needs. Taylor's time and motion study is not accepted and as entirely scientific, as there is no best way of doing the same job by two individuals, as they may not have same rhythm, attention, and learning speed. Separation of planning and doing. The greater specialization inherent in the system tends to reduce the need for skill and greater monotony of work. Advances in methods and better tools and machines eliminated some workers who found it difficult to get other jobs and caused resentment among them. Foyle's administrative management. Henry Foyle is considered as the father of administrative management 1941 to 1925, where the focus is on development of broad administrative principles. He was a French mining engineer and a leading industrialist and a successful manager. He provided a broad analytical framework of the process of administration. Foyle's 14 principles of management. Division of work. The management process produces more and better work with the same effort. Various functions of the management like planning, organizing, directing, and controlling cannot be performed efficiently by a single proprietor or by a group of directors, which may be entrusted to specialists in related fields. Second one is authority and responsibility. Implies that the manager should have the right to give orders and power to exact obedience, and the manager also may exercise formal authority and also personal power. Discipline absolutely essential for smooth running of the Business and discipline means the obedience of authority, observance of rules of services and norms of performance, respect for agreements, sincere efforts of completing the given job, respect for superiors. Fourth one is unity of command. This principle requires that every employee should receive instructions about a particular work from one superior. Only if reported to more than one superior would result in confusion and conflict of instructions. Unity of direction means that there should be complete identity between individual and organizational goals on the one hand and the between the departmental goals on the other hand, and both should not pull in the different directions. Sixth one is subordination of individual interest to general interest. If a business concern and in a business concern, an individual is always interested in maximizing his own satisfaction through more money, recognition, status, etc., which is against the general interest, which lies in maximizing production, and hence there is a need to subordinate the individual interest to the general interest. Seventh one is remuneration. Remuneration paid to the personnel of the firm should be fair and should be based on general business conditions such as cost of living, productivity of concerned employees, that and the capacity of the firm to pay, and fair remuneration increases workers' efficiency and morale and fosters good relations between them and management. Centralization. The degree of centralization or decentralization of authority must be decided on the basis of nature of circumstances, size of undertaking, the type of activities, and the nature of organizational structure. Scalar chain. Scalar chain means the hierarchy of authority from the highest executive to the lower ones for the purpose of communication, and it states superior subordinate relationship and the authority of superior in relation to the subordinates at various levels. The order or the communications should pass through the proper channels of authority along the scalar chain. Tenth is order. Putting things in order needs efforts, and the management should obtain orderliness in work through suitable organization of the men and material. The principle of right place for everything and for every man should be observed by the management, which requires the need for scientific selection of competent personnel, correct assignment of duties to personnel, and good organization. Equity means equality of fair treatment, which results from a combination of kindness and justice. Employees expect management to be equally just to everybody, which requires managers to be free from all prejudices, personal likes or dislikes. Stability of tenure of personnel. It is necessary to motivate workers to do more and better work, and they should be assured security of job by management, which if not provided, they have fear of insecurity of job. Their morale will be low and they cannot give more and better work. Initiative means freedom to think out and execute a plan. When it is provided to the employees, leads to innovation, which is the landmark of the technological progress. Initiative is one of the keenest satisfactions for an intelligent man to experience, and hence managers are required to give sufficient scope to show their initiative. Esprit de corps means team spirit, which should be created by the management among the employees, and is possible only when all the employees pull together as a team. There is scope for realizing the objectives of the concern, and there should be harmony and unity among the staff, which is a great source of strength to the undertaking, which could be achieved through avoiding divide and rule motto and use achieved through avoiding divide and rule motto and use of verbal communication and written communication to remove misunderstandings. Contributions. False principle met with widespread acceptance among writers on management and among managers and managers themselves. Drawing inspiration from a new school of thought known as management process school came into existence. Limitations. Fayol's principle of specialization led to the following dysfunctional consequences. Leads to the formation of a small work group with norms and goals, with each individual carrying out own assigned part without bothering about the overall purpose of the organization as a whole. Results in the dissatisfaction amongst workers as it does not provide them the opportunity to use all their abilities. Results in the dissatisfaction amongst workers as it does not provide them the opportunity to use all their abilities. One of the findings of Fayol's principle is that there is nothing in Fayol's writing to indicate it is the proper one to apply, like for example the principle of unity of command and the principle of unity of specialization or division of the labor cannot be followed simultaneously. In this way, many of these principles are full of contradictions and dilemmas. Fayol's principles are based on the few case studies only and have not been tested empirically, and whenever tested they have fallen into autumn leaves. These principles are often stated as unconditional statements of what should be done in all circumstances, when what is needed are conditional principles of management. The principles of Fayol, such as the principle of specialization, chain of command, unity of direction, and span of control, result in the mechanistic organizational structures which are insensitive to employees' social and psychological needs. These principles are based on the assumption that the organization are closed systems, but in reality organizations are open systems, and hence the rigid structures so created do not work well under stable conditions. Bureaucracy. German scientist Max Weber is considered to be the father of bureaucracy. He made a study on various business and government organizations and distinguished three types of administration, among them leader-oriented, tradition-oriented and bureaucratic. Leader-oriented administration is one in which there is no delegation of management functions and all employees serve as loyal subjects of a leader. Tradition-oriented, all managerial positions are handed down from generation to generation. Who are you rather than that you can do becomes the primary function. Bureaucratic oriented is based on the person's demonstrated ability to hold the position, and no person can claim particular position either because of his loyalty to the leader or because the position has been traditionally held by members of his family. The people earn positions because they are presumed to be best capable of filling them. Important features of bureaucratic administration: insistence on following standard rules. The authority is in organization should not govern by the personal preferences of the employer, but it should be governed by the standard rules which provides equality in the treatment of subordinates and continuity and predictability of action. Systematic division of work. This increases production by improving efficiency and saving time in changing over from one job to another. Principle of hierarchy is followed. Each lower officer is under the control and supervision of a higher one. It is necessary for the individual to have knowledge of and training in the application of rules. These form the basis on which legitimacy is granted to his authority. Administrative acts, decisions and rules are regarded in writing, makes the organization independent of people besides making people's understanding more accurate. There is a rational personal administration. People are selected on the basis of their credentials and merit and are paid according to their positions in their hierarchy. Promotions are made systematically and there is no winning people's loyalty and commitment. Nature of planning. Planning is the beginning of the management process. Planning is an intellectual process which requires a manager to think before acting. It is thinking in advance. By planning, managers of organizations decide what is to be done, when is to be done, how it is to be done, and who is to do it. Decision making is thus an integral part of planning. Planning is a continuous process. Kuntz and O'Donnell rightly observe that, like a navigator constantly checking where his ship is going in the vast ocean, a manager should constantly watch the process of his plans. He must constantly monitor the conditions both within and outside the organization to determine if changes are required in his plans. Importance of planning minimizes risk and uncertainty. In today's increasingly complex organizations, institution alone can no longer be relied upon as a means of making decisions. This is one reason why planning has become so important. Planning allows managers and organizations to minimize risk and uncertainty. Planning helps the manager to cope with and prepare for the changing environment leads to success. Planning does not guarantee success. Companies that plan not only outperform the no planners but also outperform their own past results. Focus attention on the organization's goals. Planning helps the manager to focus attention on the organization's goal and activities. This makes it easier to apply and coordinate the resources of the organization more economically. Facilitates control. In planning, the manager set goals and develops a plan to accomplish these goals. Then these goals and plans are becomes standards or benchmarks against which performance can be measured. The function of control is to ensure that the activities conform to the plans. Trains executives. Planning is also an excellent means for training executives. Types of plans. Plans are arranged in hierarchy within organization. At the top of this hierarchy stand objectives. Objectives are broad end of an organization which are achieved by means of strategies. Strategies are carried out by means of two other major groups of plans: single-use plans and standing plans. Single-use plans are developed to achieve a specific end, and when the end is reached, the plan is dissolved. The two major types of single-use plans are programs and budgets. Standing plans are designed for the situation that occurs again and again. For example, it would be inefficient for a bank to develop a single-use plan for processing a loan application for each new client. Instead, it uses one standing plan that anticipates in advance whether to approve or turn down the request based on the information, finished credit rating, etc. The main types of the standing plans are policies, procedures, methods, and rules. Hierarchy of organizational plans. See the figure here. Objectives. There are the endpoints on our poles start towards which all business activities like organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling are directed. Only after having defined these endpoints, they can determine the kind of organization, kind of personnel and their qualifications, kind of motivation, supervision and direction, and the control techniques which he must employ to reach these points. Objectives are the specific targets to be reached by an organization. Characteristics of objectives. Objectives are multiple in numbers. This implies that every business enterprise has a package of objectives set out in various key areas. There are 8 key areas in which objectives of performance and results are set, which are market standing, innovation, productivity, physical and financial resources, profitability, manager performance and development, worker performance, attitude and public responsibility. Objectives are either tangible or intangible. Some objectives are measurable, such as in the areas of market standing, productivity and physical and financial resources. There are quantifiable values available. Other areas of objectives are not readily quantifiable and are intangible, such as managers' performance, workers' morale, public responsibility, etc. Objectives have priority. This implies that at one particular given point of time, the accomplishment of one objective is relatively more important than the other. Priority of goals also says something about the relative importance of certain goals regardless of time. Objectives are generally arranged in a hierarchy. This means that we have corporate objectives of the total enterprise at the top, followed by divisional or departmental objectives, then each section, and finally individual objectives. Objectives sometimes clash with each other. The process of breaking down the enterprise into units requires that objectives be assigned to each unit. Each unit is given the responsibility of attaining an assigned objective. For example, the production goal of low unit cost achieved through mass production of low quality products may conflict with the sale goal of selling his quality products. The resolution of this problem is a careful balance of the goal for each unit with the recognition that the goal of neither unit can be maximized. Requirements of sound objectives. While laying down objectives there are certain requirements that the manager should always keep in mind. Objectives must be both clear and acceptable. The objectives must be clear and acceptable to the people, that is, they should be compatible with their individual goals. Objectives must support one another. Objectives could interlock or interfere with one another. There is need for coordination and balancing the activities of the entire organization. Otherwise, its members may pursue different paths, making it difficult for the manager to achieve the company's overall objectives. Objectives must be precise and measurable. Objectives must be always measurable, and more precise and measurable the goal, then the easier it is to decide how to achieve it. Precise and measurable goals are better motivators of people than general goals. Precise and measurable goals make it easier for the lower level managers to develop their own plan. Objectives should always remain valid. This means that the manager should constantly review resources and adjust them according to changed conditions. Advantages of objectives. Basically, the following benefits result from objectives. They provide a basis for planning and for developing other type of plans, such as policies, budgets and procedures. They act as motivators for individuals and departments of an enterprise, imbuing their activities with a sense of purpose. They eliminate hazard action which may result in undesirable consequences. They facilitate coordinated behaviors of various groups which otherwise may pull in different directions. They function as a basis of managerial control by serving as standards against which actual performance can be measured. They facilitate better management of the enterprise by providing basis for leading, guiding, directing and controlling the activities of people of various departments. They lessen misunderstanding and conflict and facilitates communication among people by minimizing jurisdictional disputes. They provide legitimacy for to organizations' activities, strategies. In a competitive situation, it is not enough to build the plans logically unless the plans take into account the environmental opportunities, threats, and organizational strength and weakness. A corporate strategy is a plan which makes these factors into account and provides optimal match between the firm and the environment. Two important activities are involved in strategy formulation: environmental appraisal and corporate appraisal. Environmental appraisal: political and legal factors. Analysis of the relevant environment results in the identification of threats and opportunities. Key environment factors which need to be studied are stability of the government and its political philosophy, taxation and industrial licensing laws. Monetary and fiscal policies. Restrictions on capital movement, repatriation of capital, state trading, etc. Economic factors, level of economic development and distribution of income, trend in prices, exchange rates, balance of payments, supply of labor, raw material, capital, etc. Competitive factors: identification of principal competitors, analysis of their performance and programmers in major areas, anti-monopoly laws and rules of competition, protection of patents, trademarks, brand names and other industrial property rights, social and cultural factors, literacy levels of population, religious and social characteristics, extent and rate, urbanization, rate of social change. Corporate appraisal: it involves the analysis of company's strengths and weakness. A company's strength may lie in outstanding leadership, excellent product design, low cost manufacturing skill, efficient distribution, efficient customer service, personal relationship with customers, efficient transportation and logistics, effective sales promotion, high turnover of inventories and capital, etc. The company must plan to exploit these strengths to maximum. Similarly, it may suffer from a number of weaknesses. Strategies are carried out by means of two major plans: single user plan and standing plans. Single use plans are developed to achieve a specific end, and when the end is reached, the plan is dissolved. The two major types of single use plans are programs and budgets. Programmers are precise plans are definite steps in proper sequence which need to be taken to discharge a given task. Programs are made up of policies, procedures, budgets, etc. The essential ingredients of every program are time facing and budgets. A financial or quantitative statement prepared prior to a definite period of time. The policy to be pursued during the period for the purpose of obtaining a given objective. It is clear from this definition that budgets are plans for a future period of time containing statements of expected results in the numerical terms, that is rupees, man hours, product units and so forth. The important budgets are sales budget, production budget, cash budget and revenue and expense budget. The sales budget shows the expected sales of finished goods for a period. The production budget reflects the anticipated production over a period. A cash budget projects the expected flow of the cash for a period in advance, and the revenue and expense budget shows the anticipated revenue and expenses for a period. Standing plans. Policies. A policy is a general guideline for decision making which sets up boundaries around decisions, including those that cannot be made and shutting out those that cannot. A policy can be considered as a verbal, written or implied overall guide setting up boundaries that supply the general limits and the direction in which managerial action takes place. Policies suggest how to do the work. Advantages of policies. Policies ensure uniformity of action in respect of matters at various organizational points, which make action more predictable. Policies speed up decisions at lower levels because subordinates need not consult their supervisors frequently. Types of policies can be classified on the basis of sources, functions, or organizational levels. Classification on the basis of sources. 4 types: originated, appealed, implied, and imposed policies. Originated policies are usually established formally and deliberately by top managers for the purpose of guiding of actions of their subordinates and also their own. These policies are set out in the print and embodied in manual. Policies are generally broad and allow some latitude in decision making. Procedures are specific and do not allow latitude. Policies are often established without any study or analysis. Procedures are always established after thorough study and analysis of work. Methods. A method is a prescribed way in which one step of the procedure is to be performed. Methods help in increasing the effectiveness and usefulness of the procedure. By improving the methods, reduced fatigue, better productivity, and lower cost can be achieved. Rules are detailed and recorded instructions that a specific action must or must not be performed in a given situation. A rule is different from a policy, procedure, or method. It is not a policy because it does not give a guide to thinking. It is not a procedure because there is no time sequence to a particular action. It is not a method because it is not concerned with any one particular step of the procedure. Steps in planning. There are generally involved. The steps generally involved in planning are as follows. Being aware of opportunities. Once we are aware of opportunities, we can think of setting realistic goals. Establishing verifiable goals or a set of goals to be achieved. The second step in planning is to determine the enterprise objectives. These are most often set by upper level or top managers, usually after a number of possible objectives have been carefully considered. The type of goal selected will depend on the number of factors: the basic mission of the organization, the values its managers hold, and the actual and potential abilities of the organization. Establishing planning premises. The third step in planning is to establish planning premises, that is certain assumptions about the future on the basis of which the plan will be ultimately formulated. Planning premises are vital to the success of planning that gives information relating to the future, such as population trends, the general economic conditions, production costs and prices, portable competitive behavior, capital and material availability, government policies, etc. Planning premises can be variously classified as under internal and external premises, tangible and intangible premises, controllable and non-controllable premises. Policies are generally broad and allow some latitude in decision making. Procedures are specific and do not allow latitude. Policies are often established without any study or analysis. Procedures are always established after thorough study and analysis of work. Methods. A method is a prescribed way in which one step of the procedure is to be performed. Methods help in increasing the effectiveness and usefulness of the procedure. By improving the methods, reduced fatigue, better productivity, and lower cost can be achieved. Rules are detailed and recorded instructions that a specific action must or must not be performed in a given situation. A rule A rule is different from a policy, procedure, or method. It is not a policy because it does not give a guide to thinking. It is not a procedure because there is no time sequence to a particular action. It is not a method because it is not concerned with any one particular step of the procedure. Steps in planning. There are generally involved. The steps generally involved in planning are as follows. Being aware of opportunities. Once we are aware of opportunities, we can think of setting realistic goals. Establishing verifiable goals or a set of goals to be achieved. The second step in planning is to determine the enterprise objectives. These are most often set by upper level or top managers, usually after a number of possible objectives have been carefully considered. The type of goal selected will depend on the number of factors: the basic mission of the organization, the values its managers hold, and the actual and potential abilities of the organization. Establishing planning premises. The third step in planning is to establish planning premises, that is, certain assumptions about the future on the basis of which the plan will be ultimately formulated. Planning premises are vital to the success of planning that gives information relating to the future, such as population trends, the general economic conditions, production costs and prices, portable competitive behavior, capital and material availability, government policies, etc. Planning premises can be variously classified as under internal and external premises, tangible and intangible premises, controllable and non-controllable premises. Internal and external premises. Premises may exist within and outside the company. Important internal premises include sales forecasts, policies and programs of the organization, capital investment in plant and equipment, competence of management, skill of the labor force, other resources. These external premises may include the following: general business and economic environment, technological changes, government policies and regulations, population growth, political stability, sociological factors, demand for industries, product. Tangible and intangible premises. Some of the planning premises may be tangible while some other may be intangible. Tangible premises are those which can be quantitatively measured, while intangible premises are those which cannot be measured. Controllable and non-controllable premises. While some of the planning premises may be controllable, some other are non-controllable. Because of the presence of uncontrollable factors, there is a need for the organization to revise the plans periodically in accordance with current developments. Some of the examples of uncontrollable factors are strikes, wars, natural calamities, emergency legislation, etc. Deciding the planning period. Once upper level managers have selected the basis long-term goals and planning premises, the next task is to decide the period of the plan. In some instances, plans are made for a year only, while in others they span decades. The factors which influences the choice of period are as follows: lead time in development and commercialization of a new product, time required to recover capital investments or the payback period, length of commitments already made. Finding alternative courses of action. Products may be sold directly to the consumer by the company's salesmen or through exclusive agencies. Evaluating and selecting a course of action. In this step, by carefully evaluating the alternative steps and to select the best course or courses of action, this is done with the help of quantitative techniques and operations research. Developing derivative plans. Once the plan for the organization has been formulated, middle and the lower level managers must draw up the appropriate plans for their sub-units. These sub-derived plans from main plan are termed as derivative plans. Measuring and controlling the process. The plan must be keep on monitoring. Managers need to check the progress of their plans so that they can take whatever remedial action is necessary to make the plan work. Changing the original plan if it is unrealistic. Organizing nature and purpose. Organizing is the grouping of activities necessary to attain objectives. The assignment of each grouping to a manager with authority necessary to supervise it. Its provision for coordination horizontally and vertically in the enterprise structure. An organization should be designed to clarify who is to do what and who is responsible for what results, to remove obstacles to the performance caused by the confusion and uncertainty of assignment. Organization provides the structure, the frame on which the management of the enterprise is based. It can also be defined as a vehicle moving the management efforts through the management team with the help of the enterprise resources to accomplishment of the goals or plans. Purpose of an organization. The basic purpose of having an organization is to formulate a frame or structure of an enterprise with a view to fulfill the enterprise tasks. Establishes the pattern of relationship by giving duties and responsibilities to an individual group. Demonstrates the authority, responsibility and duties of each individual or group. It tells each manager where his accountability lies and who below him are in his sphere of command. Provides the adequate communication, coordinates or integrates through organization charts and controls the activities of individuals or groups to achieve common objectives or objectives of the enterprise. Types of organization. Line organization, functional or staff organization, line and staff organization, committee organization, matrix organization. Line organization. It is also called as military or scalar organization. It is the simplest form of organization structure. Under this system, authority flows from man at the top to lowest man vertically. That is, directions issued by the man in charge of the whole organization are directly conveyed to the person responsible for the execution of the work. This makes the line of authority straight and vertical. There are three important principles in this system. Command should be given to the subordinate through the immediate supervisor. There should be only one chain, that is, command should be received from only one immediate supervisor. The number of subordinates whose work is directly commanded by the supervisor should be limited. See the figure here. Advantages. Simple and easy to understand, flexible, easy to expand. Makes clear division of authority, clear channel of communication with no confusion, strong in discipline as it fixes responsibility on an individual. Disadvantages. Neglects specialists, overloads a few key executives, requires a high type of supervisory personnel to meet the challenges, limited to very small concerns due a lack of specialization. There is more vast of material and time. Functional organization or staff organization. F.W. Taylor suggested functional organization because it was difficult to find all-round persons qualified to the work and at middle management levels in the line organization. Functional authority is the right which is delegated to an individual and individual that authorizes control of specified processes, practices, policies. As the name implies, the whole task of manufacturing and direction of the subordinates should be divided according to the type of the work involved. See the figure here. Staff organization. Advantages. It is a logical reflection of functions. It ensures a greater division of labor and enables the concern to take advantage of specialization of functions. It provides higher degree of efficiency. It facilitates mass production through specialization and standardization. Quality of work is improved. Disadvantages: coordination of various functional foremen is difficult. It makes it difficult for the management to fix responsibility for unsatisfactory results. Workers always remain confused about authority. It is unstable because workers work under several different bosses. Committee organization: in the modern complex business world, some of the administrative tasks cannot be performed by a single person alone. Such situations may call for two or more persons to perform such tasks. This forms a committee organization. Committee is a group of people pooled to carry out a defined objective. The various functions of committee are: collect the necessary information from different sources and arrange them in order. The collected information is critically examined and analyzed. Draft the detailed report containing the recommendations for the purpose of implementation. Framing the policies of the organization. Selection of personnel, directing and controlling the officer at regular interval to achieve the goals. See the figure for committee organization. Advantages: committee will take valuable decisions. The committee members can use their expertise while taking decisions. Committee decisions are many times better. Communication of decisions is faster with the involvement of members from different groups. Coordination among departments is made easy since managers of various departments are involved in decision making. Decision is based on vast experience of the members. Disadvantages: many times decisions are delays due to the heterogeneous group in the committee. Increased administrative expenses. Secrecy of decision cannot be maintained. Sometimes decisions are taken on compromises. Sometimes expressing ideas may lead to the hated arguments. Management by objective, MBO. Management by objective is also referred as result management or management by results. Its main aim is to increase the effectiveness of managers by placing the responsibilities. MBO is a process in which the general manager and his subordinates of an organization jointly identify the common objectives, define individuals' responsibility, and use the measures as guides in achieving the company's goals. Unless clear defined objectives are set, it is not easy to attain company goals. The objectives set must meet the following requirements: work in the same direction for achieving company's goal, clearly define and communicate to all, flexible for making adjustments. The nature of the objectives can be of the following types: short term, long term, specific and general. Advantages of MBO: it provides a basis for planning and development of policies, budgets and procedures. It is a powerful tool for the management to achieve a higher productivity. It gives proper direction and necessary responsibility to the people in an organization. It coordinates the efforts of various departments of an organization. It improves employee morale and discipline. Management by exception, MBE. The principle of management by exception was first given by F.W. Taylor in 1919. According to this principle, only unusual or exceptional items of major deviation in the daily activity should be brought to the notice of manager. It states that non-deviations from standard should not brought to his attention. 6 phases of management by exception: assignment of values to identify the exceptions, projection of meaningful measurements to business objectives, make observation, comparison of actual performance with expected performance, reporting the balance to management, decision making. Advantages of MBE: much of the manager's time is saved. Managers find more time and feels comfortable to think of improvements. Subordinates feel free and take responsibility of the work. This principle brings confidence among workers in their work. Disadvantages: under this principle, there is a possibility of misusing the authority by subordinates. People may not work promptly as they feel more free. Staffing. It is important to have good organization structure, but it is even more important to fill the jobs with the right people. A company may be successful with an organization structure, but quality will be depends on staffs. Filling and keeping the positions provided for by the organization structure filled with the right people. It is the staffing phase of the management function. It includes several sub-functions. Recruitment are getting the applicants for the job as they open up. Selection of the best qualified from those who seek the jobs. Training those who need further instructions to perform their work effectively or to qualify for promotions. Performance appraisal, since it serves as the basis for the job change or promotion. Administration of the compensation plans, since it is an important factor in both getting and holding the qualified people. Importance and need for proper staffing. There are a number of advantages of proper and efficient staffing. It helps in discovering talented and competent workers and developing them to move up the cooperable ladder. It ensures greater production by putting the right man in the right job. It helps to avoid a sudden disruption of an enterprise production run by indicating shortages of personnel, if any, in advance. It helps to prevent underutilization of personnel through over manning and resultant high labor cost and low profit margins. It provides information to management for the internal succession of managerial personnel in the event of an unanticipated turnover. Recruitment. Once the recruitment of manpower is known, the process of recruitment starts. It can be defined as the process of identifying the sources for prospective candidates and to stimulate them to apply for the job. Recruitment is the process of generating of applications or applicants for the specific positions. Sources of recruitment. First is the re-employing former employees who have been laid off or have left for personal reasons may be re-employed. These people may require less initial training than that needed by total strangers to the enterprise. Friends and relatives of present employees. Some industries with a record of good personal relations encourage their employees to recommend their friends and relatives for the appointment in the concern where they are employed. Applicants at the gate. Unemployed persons who call at the gates of the factories are interviewed by the factory representative, and those who are found suitable for the existing vacancies are selected. College and technical institutions. Many big companies remain in touch with the colleges and technical institutions from where young and talented persons may be recruited. Employment exchanges. An employment exchange is an office set up by the government for bringing together those men who are in search of employment and those employers who are looking for men. Employment exchanges register unemployed people and maintain the records of their names, qualifications, etc. The employer on their part intimate the exchange about the vacancies which occur in their factories and the type of the employees they require for filling up these vacancies. Whenever any vacancy is intimated, the exchange selects some persons from among the registered employment seekers and forwards their names to the employers for consideration. Advertising the vacancy. One more source that is tapped by the companies is advertising the vacancy in leading papers, websites, hoardings, etc. Labor unions. In companies with strong labor unions, persons are sometimes recommended for appointment by their labor unions. Selection. In selection process, manager compares applicants' qualifications with requirement of a job and eliminates all those who do not stand up to this comparison. Importance of the selection process. Whereas under recruitment, the manager identifies the sources for prospective candidates and stimulates them to apply for various openings in his organization. Under selection, he compares their qualifications with the requirements of the job and eliminates all those who do not stand up to this comparison. Here are several advantages of a proper selection procedure. As the employee are placed in the job for which they are best suited, they derive maximum job satisfaction and reap maximum wages. Labor turnover is reduced and the overall efficiency of organization is increased. And finally, a good relationship develops between the employer and the employees. Steps in selection procedure. Job analysis. Job analysis is the process by means of which a description is developed of the present method and procedure of doing a job. Job description is the result of a job analysis or set down in the job description. Job specification. A job specification is a statement of minimum acceptable human qualities necessary to perform job satisfactorily. Some commonly used steps in selection are application blank, initial interview of the candidate, employment test, checking references, physical or medical examination, final interview. Application blank. Filling of the application blank by the candidate is the first step in the process of selection. In this form, the applicant gives relevant personal data such as his qualifications, specialization, experience, firms in which he has worked, etc. The application blanks are carefully examined by the company and decide the applicants who are to be called for interview. Initial interview. Those who are selected for interview on the basis of particulars furnished in the application blank are called for initial interview by the company. It is also used for establishing a friendly relationship between the candidate and the company and for obtaining additional information or clarification on the information already on the application blank. The employment test. For further assessment of candidates' nature and abilities, some tests are used in the selection procedure. Some experts have developed certain tests by which a candidate likes and dislikes, his intelligence, abilities, his capacity to learn and to benefit from training, his adaptability, etc. can be estimated. Some commonly used tests are aptitude test. This test measures the application capacity to learn the skill required for a job. It helps in finding out whether a candidate is suitable for the clerical or a mechanical job. Interest test. This is used to find out the type of the work in which the candidate has an interest. It does not reveal candidate ability to do it. Well prepared questionnaires are used in these tests. Intelligent test. This test is used to find out the candidate's intelligence. By using this test, the candidate's mental alertness, reasoning ability, power of understanding, etc. are judged. Example regarding reading and summarizing a paragraph in the allocated time, writing 10 or 15 words that begin with the same letter in 1 minute. Trade or performance or achievement or job specified test. This test is used to measure the candidate's level of knowledge and skill in the particular job in which he will be appointed. The candidate is asked to do a simple operation which is a part of or similar to his proposed job. For example, a candidate for a driver's post may be asked to drive the vehicle to assess his proficiency, or a typist may be asked to type out some letters to find out his speed and accuracy, or a candidate for a post of a salesman may be asked to attend to a prospective customer who enters the shop. Personality test. Personality test is used to measure those characteristics of a candidate which constitute his personality. Example, self-confidence, temper and initiative. judgment, dominance, integrity, originality, etc. Personality tests are very important in the selection process, particularly in the ease of appointments to the post of supervisors and high executives. Checking references. If the candidate has been found satisfactory at the interview, and if his performance is good in employment or proficiency test, the employer would like to get some important personal details about the candidate, such as his character, past history, background, etc., verified from the people mentioned in the application. For this purpose, the employer may also contact his friends residing in the locality where the candidate is residing, or he may contact the present or former employers of the candidate. Physical or medical examination. Physical or medical examination is another step in the selection process. The objectives of this examination are to check the physical fitness of the applicant for the job applied for, to protect the company against the unwarranted claims for compensation, to prevent communicable diseases entering the business concern. Final interview. This interview is conducted for those who are ultimately selected for the employment. In this interview, the selected candidates are given the brief introduction about company and their role.